Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to unpack the profound insights from Carl Jung's 1933 text, Modern Man in Search of a Soul. You know, this isn't just some dusty old psychology book. It's actually a timeless roadmap for the human mind, and honestly, it's arguably more relevant today than when it was first published.
Okay, let's dive right into this fascinating source material. Looking back at 1933, what's so incredible here is how Jung manages to synthesize his years of clinical psychiatric practice into this highly accessible guide. It's perfectly written for anyone feeling, well, a little lost in the modern world. He basically hands us the clues to the nature of the psyche that we are all painfully groping for.
So here is our roadmap for today. 1. The modern spiritual crisis. 2. Jung's middle path. 3. The case of mountain sickness. 4. Translating the warning dreams. 5. Dreams as objective facts. And 6. Asking what for, not why. Let's get started.
Section 1. The Modern Spiritual Crisis, a Post-War World. To truly understand Jung's clinical work, we have to start at the macro level. The Western world was on the verge of a profound shift, tearing society into two distinct camps. His patients were living in a post-war world absolutely desperate for answers.
Humanity felt forced to choose between old religious illusions or cold, calculating materialism. On one side, you've got people streaming back to revealed religion, just seeking comfort in traditional dogma to escape all the chaos. And on the flip side, you have militant rationalism. This camp claims that if we just apply pure intellect, technology, and economics, well, all human problems will just magically vanish. It's this exhausting, endless tug of war between absolute faith and absolute logic.
Section 2. Jung's Middle Path. Science Meets the Soul. But out of this chaos, there emerges a third group of people who have outgrown the church, yet still feel the soul as vividly as their own body.
So the crucial point here is Jung's middle path, a way to explore the undeniable reality of the psyche using the rigorous observational tools of science. These individuals, they refuse to abandon their inner spiritual reality, but they also refuse to ignore the hard facts of science. They know that to achieve a genuinely new attitude, the answer lies inward. They don't need a regression to medieval theology, and they definitely don't want to become victims of 19th century materialism. They just need to understand the subtle but perfectly definite laws that actually govern their own minds.
Section 3. The Case of Mountain Sickness, a Clinical Mystery. Now let's zoom in from philosophical theory right down to practical reality. Jung wasn't just a theorist, he was a working psychiatrist, and the best way to understand his middle path is to see it applied to a real person in crisis.
We meet a man who charted an absolutely incredible, relentless ascent up the corporate ladder. Born to a poor peasant family, this patient used sheer ambition, massive industry, and native talent to climb completely out of his humble origins. Step by step, decade by decade, he advanced until he finally reached a highly prominent position in the world. I mean, he was a textbook success story.
But right at the peak of his career, when he literally could have climbed even higher, his body suddenly intervened. He developed these classic symptoms of literal mountain sickness. And what's really interesting here is just how physical these symptoms are. We're talking severe dizziness, unexplained nausea, a heavy head, difficulty breathing. He had reached a place in life from which he could have launched into the absolute upper echelons of society. But every single time he tried to push forward, these debilitating physical symptoms stopped him dead in his tracks. His conscious mind wanted to keep climbing, but something else was hitting the brakes hard.
Section 4. Translating the warning dreams, the unconscious voice. Because his conscious ego completely denied that there was any reason he shouldn't keep advancing, Jung needed an objective second opinion. He found it in the patient's dreams. In his first dream, his old schoolmates point out his absence. He told Jung he's back in his small village, walking past the peasant boys he grew up with, actively pretending not to know them. As he passes, one of them points and says, "He doesn't often come back to our village." Jung's punchy interpretation reveals that the patient is dangerously denying his humble foundations. The unconscious is trying to anchor him. It's essentially saying, hey, you forget how far down you began. The man has spent his entire life climbing away from his roots, and now, up at these dizzying heights of success, he has entirely lost his footing in reality. Now the thrill and terror really peak in his second dream, where a driver goes recklessly fast on a curve, derailing a train. The patient dreamt he was rushing to catch a train, barely making it.
But the train is incredibly long, and it hits a curious S-shaped curve. The dreamer realizes that if the driver puts on full steam on the straightaway before the rear coaches have cleared that curve, the back of the train is going to be thrown right off the rails. And that is exactly what happens. The driver opens the throttle, the coaches rock frightfully, and there's a terrible, catastrophic crash. The patient woke up in absolute terror.
The unconscious is practically screaming a clear warning here. The patient's frantic haste for further advancement is going to cause a catastrophic breakdown. The driver at the front of the train, that represents his conscious ambition, blindly accelerating. The rear coaches represent his actual human limitations. The mountain sickness wasn't just some random illness. It was his psyche's desperate attempt to stop him from climbing to a height for which he was entirely unfitted. He had literally exhausted his strength.
Section 5. Dreams as objective facts, physiological symptoms. This case study completely shifts how we view the strange images our brains produce at night. We so often dismiss dreams as just a meaningless conglomerate of memories from the day, right? A negligible byproduct of the mind. But Jung argues they are anything but negligible.
I absolutely love this clinical analogy. It beautifully demystifies the analysis by treating the dream not as a freak of nature, but as an objective diagnostic symptom. Your conscious mind can lie to you. It can say, I'm fine, I can work 80 hours a week, I can totally handle this massive promotion. But your unconscious mind, it doesn't lie. It has zero respect for how things should be, it only reports on how things actually are. If your dream shows a train crashing because it's going too fast, that is a physiological fact of your current psychological state. Section 6. Asking what for, not why, a teleological approach. Let's see how this builds into Jung's major departure from his contemporaries. At the time, the psychoanalytic world was heavily dominated by Sigmund Freud's methods, which operated on a very different fundamental premise. While Freudians obsessed over the why of past trauma, Jung forces us to ask what for, revealing the dream's crucial warning for our future path. The causalistic approach traps the patient in the past, endlessly digging for some hypothetical childhood trauma, but Jung's teleological approach looks right at the immediate pressing situation. That dream of the crashing train wasn't primarily about something that happened 20 years ago. It was an anticipation of the future. It was showing the patient exactly what to do now, which was, frankly, to slow down. Because ultimately, whether it's mountain sickness or a crashing train, your psyche absolutely knows when you're off the track. The only question is, are you willing to actually listen to the diagnosis? Sadly, the patient in Jung's case study refused to listen. He pushed for further advancement anyway, and just as the dream predicted, he suffered a total breakdown. His waking reality mirrored the train wreck. So as you go about your week, take a moment to consider, what are your own internal diagnostics trying to tell you? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.